Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. It's a stressful, anxiety-ridden, nauseating banter segment before this lovely talk with Erica Iman.
That's right. Well, there's a little bit of pounding outside my window. They decided that they were going to replace the siding on our house today after we had hail damage a year ago. And they were supposed to show up nice and early and get that taken care of. And, well, it's gone a little bit long, so I think they should stop soon.
Speaking of podcasts and hail damage and whatnot, I got photographs here just earlier from our good friend David Mayhew, the storm-chasing photographer.
Right.
He's going to be a future guest, and he sent me some shots of the hail damage that literally smashed his windshield and even side windows. Like, what? This guy's nuts. He's
chasing the storms, and that shit's all coming down around him, and
oh, sure. Yeah, he's in the shit. As Bill Murray said in, it wasn't Bill Murray. It was the guy? Rushmore. Oh. As they say in Richmore, were you ever in the shit?
Okay.
That's right. He's been in the shit.
Okay. Well, there you go.
All right. Anyway.
Speaking of Bill Murray, I spent all of Jazz Fest looking for Bill Murray this year because of your post on social media.
Well, you can't find Bill Murray if you're looking for him. That's the laws of Bill Murray. You'll never see him if you're looking.
Well, I guess my point is I wasn't specifically looking for Bill Murray, but somebody of the celebrity ilk, since you had that.
Did you run into any celebrities?
Well, here's the thing. At the end of Jazz Fest, we were not too far from the blues tent, and so Melissa Etheridge was performing there.
Wow.
And which she could have been easily on the main stage. So I'm kind of surprised they put her in the blues tent because the crowds were just like insane. Anyway, we were parked just behind the blues tent. They put us there because of my handicap issue. And I'm walking back and forth doing a little pre-packing. She's the last act for the whole weekend, grabbing boxes. And I'm thinking, that's her, what do you call it? Her, what do they call those?
Tour bus?
That was her tour bus right there. I'm thinking, I wonder if I just walk really slow by here, if I could get a celebrity sighting on her way to perform.
Did you get one?
I did not. All right. But that leads me to a different story about that whole scene. So the crowds were so packed outside our booth waiting to see her perform. And the tent was full, and the 50 to 100 feet between the tent, just standing room only, backed up. So there's people's backsides all the way up against our booth and standing there.
Got a little log jam there in front of your booth, a little blood clot?
Yeah.
All right.
So these nice ladies had threw a blanket down on the hard concrete and sand. And
in front of your booth?
Just right there, right on the entry of our booth there. And they're sitting there kind of leaning against some of the panels. And I'm thinking, it's the end of the show. We're about to break down. Let them have their fun. So we're sitting there, Renee and I, having a nice little end of show chat, kind of planning what we're going to do to get the heck out of there like we all do. And suddenly one of the women starts putting her hands up against her throat like she's choking. And I'm like, Renee, I think she might be choking. And Renee doesn't mess around. She's had a history with people who were like choking before. So she knew you don't wait. So she's like, Excuse me, ma'am. She hops up. Excuse me. Are you choking? Are you choking? And she's got the hand on the chest. She's nodding up and down. And she's like, we got to do something. And getting her friends to acknowledge that their friend is having a problem.
Wow.
So it starts to get kind of scary. And then the lady looks at us. She was able to spit out asthma. Right? So she's having trouble breathing. Renee's like, do you have your inhaler? We've got a lot of energy here ramped up with this lady. The friends are starting to panic too because we're getting them worked up. And she's trying to communicate to us that this is no big deal. So the only way that she could get us to calm down was to walk away. walk away from us. So we would just leave her alone.
You were giving her asthma. Like, it's all anxiety driven and everything. Maybe she was getting a little excited about Melissa Etheridge and was like, maybe she'll come to my window. And then she starts to asphyxiate. Like, my God, they're like the panicking glass blowers.
Totally. So yeah, that was our nice end to a good show. So to have that crazy experience.
Absolutely. I've told many stories, and I can't remember whether I talked to you or the show or David Mayhew, but have I talked about my celebrity sightings at Jazz Fest besides Bill Murray?
Not besides Bill Murray. Bill Murray was one I remember. You
know, this guy comes to the booth and he looks sharp but casual, if that makes sense. You know, he's got like a nice shirt on, button-down shirt.
Kind of stylish, like right?
Stylish. Dark jeans, cowboy boots. And whoever I told the story to last time was like, so you. Like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I was looking in a mirror, basically.
Yes, I'm so fancy. But anyway, I'm like, I really wanted to go see Beck, and I'm talking to Susie, and I'm like, I want to go over there and see Beck. And she's like, yeah, just go, it's fine. And I was talking to this guy, and I'm like, I'm sorry, buddy. I'll leave you in the much more capable hands of my wife. She's the artist. And I hit the road and went over to see Beck. And as I'm walking over there, I'm like, God, I hope that wasn't, somebody. And I'm walking over to Beck. And
everybody is somebody, Will.
Some people less than others. You know what I mean? Like, it was Steve Miller Band.
Okay.
And I totally big leagued him. You didn't
deserve him, Will.
I was looking at the Jazz Fest Instagram feed later on, and I'm like, oops, there's Steve Miller. Like, sorry, buddy. Like, yeah. Can you think of another celebrity that is less recognizable than Steve Miller? Like,
I don't recognize him, and I'm even trying to picture him right now. Yeah. So,
he's probably late 60s to 70s, early 70s, maybe. Mm-hmm. Just white guy. Average-looking white guy, white songs, right?
Yeah. Well, there certainly were plenty of people walking in the booth that had that style you're talking about. And you're like, you look like you could be someone, but I'm not quite sure. I can't put my finger on it. So
Yeah. All right. Well, that's celebrity sightings there at Jazz Fest. That's good.
Yeah. How's your last show been? You came from Greenville.
Yeah. The drive was fucking brutal. Absolutely just... elbow throbbing, brutal. It was a good, I guess getting to Greenville actually was not as bad. The first day I enjoyed I had built it up in my mind as I just am really tired of driving right now. Okay. Everything is so far from where I live.
It really is, man.
It's like, it's 14 hours. It's like, oh, Texas, it's close. It's bordering. And I'm like, well, you got to drive through like factory farms and everything smells awful and all the sadness, and it's gross. And getting to anywhere, it's like 14 hours. Like 14 hours to Bayou City and 12 hours to this. And it's just, I don't know, I'm tired of driving.
Yeah, that sucks. I mean, I was thinking about the fact that I've got 4 shows coming up here starting which sounds like a lot, but they're all 4 hours from home. It's like a good old Midwest tour here. I get to come home probably with it before noon the next day. I'll be home in the studio. So that changes things. And when you're like all the way cross country and you're kind of like, you're there and it's going to be days to get home. So that changes things.
I haven't driven that short of a distance since I left the East Coast and would drive to like Alexandria or something from Richmond. But everything is, I'm thinking about close shows. Like from, we're getting ready to leave for Minnesota this weekend. And I'm looking at, my next show is Old Town. That's only 9 hours away. Like, that's a short distance. And I got 9 hours that. And then the next weekend I've got Lakefront. I'm like, do I even bother going home? Like like a full day of driving, another full day of driving means only one full day at home. Do I even bother? Should I just
And it's
stay?
A Friday. It's a Friday show set up on Thursday. So you are really a short week.
So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's a setup Thursday. I can't drive. I'd have to leave on.
Logistic nightmares, that's for sure. Yeah.
The whole goddamn career is. Hi, I'm your podcast host. I'm tired of my career.
Brightness and shiny today.
Yeah. Can we get can we get some more money for this podcast by any chance so I can just retire and flap my gums? say shitty things about people.
That's what you call easy street.
Yeah. Oh, hi. I'm just going to talk to people. And we're like, that's the guy that used to do shows.
Oh, man.
But you asked on my last show, it was artistry. Yeah. And
yes.
Have you ever done that one?
Never. No.
Okay. Greenville, South Carolina. It's a little weird in that Greenville is like aggressively friendly. Like,
really? Like Greenville is, or people who come to that show? I mean,
maybe it's the people that come to the show, but everybody that I've met that is from Greenville or in Greenville is like so friendly. I'm almost like, Richmond has kind of got like more of a, I don't know where I grew up. It's more of a kind of mean. Yeah, it's a little more Northeast kind of feeling. Okay. It's right. a little more New York, Boston, Philly kind of feel. It's a little like that. It's not as Southern, I guess. And you get down south, like down to Greenville, and people are like, really nice. And they come in, I'm like, are y'all making fun of me? Like, I feel like, like how they're so friendly. I'm like wondering kind of what's up. Like,
what's the catch?
Yeah. What are you? They're like, oh, hi, how are you? Yeah. Oh, you're so great. Your work is so amazing. And it's like, oh, I love that. No, I mean it. It's amazing. Well, thank you. No, you don't understand. It's amazing. I'm like, fuck, get out of here. I can't even look you in the eye anymore. It's like,
It just got weird.
Yeah, you made it weird. I don't know, but it's so nice. And people are so lovely. And I should look up the name of the artist that I was next to, because well, there was Adam, the boxed music guy. Oh. He's awesome. He's hilarious and a great neighbor.
Yes, I know the work.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
It is, I got to admit, drum circle sounds are like just below like a monkey that found a pot and a spoon. Like that's where it lands on the musical hierarchy for me. Oh, like, so monkey with a pot and a spoon, like gang, 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 like, at a shitty like Snake Farm Zoo.
Okay.
Like, you got that. And then you got below that, you got hippies doing a drum circle. And it sounded a little drum circle-y to me.
Okay.
And on the other side, I had a big double booth of just the loveliest couple. I should look up their names, but young couple, two lovely kids. They're doing digital and some like kind of Renaissance colors and stuff in them.
Nice.
I should. I know their names, but I can't remember the business name, so I should just shut up. But whatever, they're lovely.
Well, before Greenville, we had the pleasure of being directly across from each other at Southlake, and that was kind of interesting to see.
When was that? That was like last year, wasn't it?
It was like, many, many moons ago. But listen.
Oh, well, that's right, because I talked to Camille about it. When I interviewed Camille, because I just finished and then interviewed, so I talked to her about it. And then we never got a chance to chat about it.
That's true. We haven't. Right. But it was kind of a bizarre experience sitting directly across from your big double booth, and you're looking at my big double booth. We're right in line with each other. And I mean, at first when we were sitting there, I look over and I'm like, taking in your work, and I'm like, I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying all the subtlety in your pieces, your layering and the sheet music, and it's just all of it. Just totally cool. And then the crowd starts coming. And, I'm pretty comfortable at a show. I kind of know that I do draw eyes.
Sure.
People will walk and they'll see the glass and they'll just do the ooh kind of thing, right? So at the beginning of the show, it was quite an experience. I'm seeing the crowds walk. They look to the right. They see my booth. They look to the left. They see your booth. And then they keep looking at your booth. And they keep walking.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to get my crowd. But in the beginning, I'm thinking, Will's winning this battle. Will's getting all the eyes right now.
Oh, man. That's wild. It's funny you bring that up, because there are people that I don't want to be right next to. I feel like I can hold my own against just about anybody. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I would like to go to dinner with Dolan and Allie Marie, but I don't want to have them right next door. That's it's just a little too sexy. Just a little too much,
Too much, yeah.
But that's, you got that booth, and it's like, I've said this again and again, you got like a pace and a half, right? To get across that 10 feet. And boom, boom, and you're crossed it. So if something happens, that's why we get all these. I mean, I could do a show 10 years in a row. There's no way I'm not going to have somebody come up into my booth and say, oh, is this your first year?
Exactly. I mean, I thought that was
actually looking.
Right. I mean, it was a really good point that Camille made about, your last talk, where it's funny how that happens to us as artists, that they'll come every year and then suddenly you're the new thing, even though you've been in, you've been there, you've been in the same spot or whatever thing that could make you, recognizable from year to year. It's really funny that whatever hits that year is what it is,
Right. And sometimes they're not even like, they may have seen you, but they're not really ready for it mentally.
Right.
Like they're not ready to, commit to, one of your tower installations. So therefore they're like, yep, didn't see anything like that last year. But I'm like, well, it was here in the same spot. But like
different colors maybe, but yeah, right.
Yeah. And if they're ready for it, or maybe they went home and they didn't think they were ready, and it's like, subtly got inside their head, and then they come back to buy the next year.
Boom. And I do think sometimes collectors, they show up with a list in their head, like, that spot over the couch, I really want something there. So they might have tunnel vision about what they're looking for. Might be a certain 2D kind of piece that they might be looking for. So,
jewelry, coffee mug, monkey banging on a pot.
Welcome to the road, everyone. Welcome to the road.
I don't want to hear anybody's booth. It boils down to that.
Well, it reminds me of a conversation that I had with Jeff Zachman at my last show. Jeff Zachman, kinetic artist. He's the one. Yes, Will. Rolling balls down his kinetic sculpture all weekend. Clink. I hope I don't get this wrong because I don't want to offend him. I'm trying to remember the story that he told me.
I'm going after everybody today.
Verbatim. He said he was next to an artist who she shall remain nameless. And she said, oh, I'm so glad you're my neighbor this weekend because you get to get all the idiots in your booth or something along the line. You get the people who just want to look at shiny ball going through the falling down thing. And I said to him, I go, was that offensive? I mean, did you find that offensive? He goes, oh, hell no, I thought it was hilarious because I do get those people standing in my booth.
Hey, I wanted to bring this up. That was kind of funny. There was some knucklehead was online talking about, it was like the stupidest post I think I've ever seen.
Nah, it wasn't stupid. Nah.
Oh, it was dumb.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, it was dumb.
I'm throwing your words out at you, Will.
I know. I mean, somebody came up with this topic and they're like, maybe this would shake up the art fair world or be interesting if people would let you jury in with one thing and then just show whatever the hell you want. And it's like, I mean, I did respond, nah. Like, it was so ignorant that I was kind of like, well, why is anyone even talking about this?
Giving it any oxygen, right?
Right.
It
I mean, that's like the very definition of cheaters, right?
Definitely.
Right. I mean, if you want to show the stuff, and granted, there are so many artists out there, and we got one on the show today that have two different bodies of work that work beautifully together. Just exquisite space when you walk into her booth. Erica Iman, she's jurying in with, she sends her ceramic jury in, slides in, and then she sends her paintings in.
Yes.
And then she's got the same booth shot. Hey, here's what they look like together.
That's
or
right.
I would assume, right? Did she say that on the show? I can't remember.
We didn't talk about booth
shot
image. We did not, no. But
anyway,
she does talk about the fact that, it's a challenge if they don't both get in together because the display is kind of integral now that both bodies of work just work together. So,
and you're kind of, I mean, I don't want to disparage any juries that don't let in both bodies of work, but you have to be a fool if you didn't let both of them in because it looks so cool together.
Yeah. I mean, it makes total sense for sure.
Right.
Yeah. That's kind of what my reaction to this post was, which, like you had brought up in your responses, a lot of words that people were giving wasn't going to get through to anybody.
Very verbose. It was
very verbose.
Do we need like that? It's just like it's like a child walking up and you're like, I want free ice cream for everybody. It's like, well, Billy, ice cream costs money, so lovely idea. But like, why would you even give their free pizza party? Okay, Billy. That's not going to happen either.
I was just trying to say in my own way that system does exist. Just submit 2 applications, 3 applications, 5 applications, and show the work together. It's there. It's not like you can't show multiple bodies of work. They just have to get juried. That's the whole point. So submit your apps.
I mean, that's why there's a jury. There's a little catch-all that keeps you from bringing your macrame flower holders in with your paintings.
I hear Spiller's doing that now. Macrame.
Her macrame game is on point, my man.
Pretty damn awesome.
Oh, she doesn't do macrame. All right. She might. I don't know.
Yeah.
She weaves it out of cat hair. smells like ammonia.
Okay.
Jesus.
Well, back to Erica. Here is Erica Iman. I had a really great time with her this week, and I was kind of surprised. We talked, we nerded out a little bit on craft. I didn't know some of the directions we would go with it, but I loved the whole point about risk. And so when you get to that part of the talks, just know that was one of my particular favorite parts of this conversation.
That really was a shining spot too, as well as her demeanor as well, which I feel like it matches the work. There's a subtlety and a calmness about her that seems to come across in her work as well as the way she speaks. And I feel like my wife always says that we all kind of look like our work. She thinks everybody kind of looks like
I
their
thought
work.
That was people look like their dogs, but
no. I mean, yeah, sometimes. But there's an element of like an Ed Pribble sculpture that even when he's carving Batman, I'm like, Ed, that looks like you. But yeah, there's an element of like, I definitely look like I've walked out of one of my paintings, and you and Renee look like you're floating on the wall in the garden with your balls of,
We're so colorful. Such
you
colorful
are very
characters.
Colorful. Yes, absolutely.
All right.
But
enough about us. Here's Erica. So here's Erica Iman. Erica Iman from Kansas City, Missouri.
This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
Will, I started applying last week for next season's art shows, and I just really love that with Zapplication, we can categorize our shows by favorites, and then I can go in and sort those favorites by application deadline, so I never miss an application to one of my favorite shows.
It's true. It has lots of different options, lots of different add-ons and tags that we can use.
And there never seems to be enough time. I just got home from a show. I need to get back into the studio. There's pieces to be made, but applications are coming due.
I'm so busy with all of the other hats that I wear to go onto other websites to apply to shows. To be honest, I don't even do it. I only go to Zap.
Yeah.
And basically, if I don't have to think about it, then I'm a happy man.
Okay, we have a call to entry this week for the Edina Fall into the Arts Festival in Edina, Minnesota.
That is one of the Minneapolis area shows. It's a fall show coming up on September 9th and 10th of 2023, but the deadline is more quickly approaching, folks. When is that, Douglas?
The deadline on that is June 9th, and Edina's a pretty sweet little area in Minneapolis. It's got a lot of boutiques and nice shops, pretty affluent area.
Yeah, if you're looking for a show in that particular area, if that's how you plan it, your schedule, you're looking for a Minneapolis-based show, the Edina area is a safe and welcoming, beautiful area. Centennial Lakes Park is a prime location for an art fair, as is said on their website, and it's a beautiful location there in the Midwest.
So if you'd like to check out this show, log on to Zapplication and look up Edina Fall into the Arts and check out all their information.
Yep.
Deadline is June 9th.
Coming up fast, folks.
Is the pronunciation of your last name Iman?
It is. Yep, that's right.
Okay, not like David Bowie's wife.
Right, no. It sounds, Iman sounds much fancier, but yeah.
It does. You could actually adopt that if you wanted it.
I should have just gone with that, at least for like the studio name or something, right?
Exactly. Well, Erica, thank you for joining me today. I'm looking forward to our conversation and getting to know each other.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
sure.
We don't really know each other that much.
No.
Just kind of came on each other's radar lately. And I'm like, you know what? I think I want to talk to you. So we'll see what happens
thanks.
Today.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. Yeah, for sure.
Well, a funny little story that... not a funny little story, but a little story to kind of get us started that I was talking to Camille Marchese recently, and you were exhibited at her show, Coconut Grove, this year, and you had kind of a good experience, right?
Yeah, amazing experience. So yeah, I listened to the podcast from this week that you released, and it was great. I mean, I'd never done any Florida shows before, let alone Coconut Grove. But yeah, it was great. Yeah,
well, I'm trying to give you the opportunity to tell us about your big prize win.
Right.
So tell me about that part of it. You won the big prize at that show.
We'll start out with the big prize. Yeah. Yes, I got Best of Show, and it was amazing. I mean, I was completely blown away, completely surprised. A funny thing is they came by with this kind of bagpipe marching band.
Right.
Maybe this is a usual thing. This is the first time I'd been there. So
no, actually, that's what I was kind of interested in.
Oh, really?
Camille said she wanted to bring in kind of that pomp and circumstance that they did at Winter Park. And wanted to, but she couldn't get the marching band. So she said, well, I guess a bagpiper will do.
Right. Well, there were multiple, and it was a large group coming through, and it was so loud.
Was it?
It was coming through, and it was just enough room for them to come through. So it really cleared the crowd out. And then I see Camille just kind of like through the bagpipes, and she kind of like peeking at me like, hey, and she's like pointing at me. And then I'm like, what? Oh, okay. I'll come out. What's going on? She couldn't get through because the band was still marching by. And anyway, it was a funny experience. So
well, what she told me, and I wonder if I'm getting this right or if this is what you noticed. They were doing their procession to your booth. And she says they're walking along and she's looking back and forth and looking side to side. And all of a sudden she looks over and she sees you in your booth looking out at the spectacle. And she's like, wait a minute. That's where we're supposed to be going right now. And the bagpipers had to stop and turn around and come back and catch you.
I was wondering, like I said, it was like she couldn't even get across to me. So it was like this kind of like, she's just like waving at me from the river of the bagpipes coming through. So yeah, it was funny.
Well, congratulations on that. That's really exciting.
Thanks. It was very exciting. And it was just an amazing show, like weekend, all of that kind of came together. So yeah, it was great.
Well, the first thing when I heard about you winning was I know that you show in 2 mediums. So did you win Best in Show for both your bodies of work, or did they choose one?
So I think it was just kind of an overall. I don't think it was one or the other. So yeah, I think it was just the combo. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about that. Tell me about how you work in 3D and in 2D.
Yeah. Well, so I've worked in clay for over 20 years. So maybe like 23 years now. I went to school for clay, just had a lot of experience in that. And then the paintings really came about just in the last 5 years. I've kind of really developed those and started showing them within, I guess you could say it in the last 5 years, but really art fair wise, just the last 3 years, I would say. So the paintings are actually made out of black iron oxide. So one of the colorants that I use in my ceramic glazes. So really, I just started experimenting with those materials, and that's how the paintings came about.
And you're not working with brushes, right? It's a different technique.
Yeah. So really, it all started with just raw material experiments. So the things that I had in the glaze studio and the ceramic studio, I just started noticing the materials doing some really interesting things naturally on their own, and just wondered how I could kind of capture that. Back when I was in school, I did a little bit of experimentation with clay slips and things on paper and some other oxides and things. So it kind of stemmed from that, which was about 10 years ago. So, but then, within the last 5, I've really tried to develop them into more finished works. And so the black iron oxide, I'm mixing it with water in different proportions, and then I'm pouring it onto a prepared panel at this point. And I'm kind of just, as I'm doing it, the panel is vertical. And so I'm kind of drawing and pouring at the same time. So I'm kind of drawing the forms out, but I'm allowing the material to really run down the panel. Like I said, I just started experimenting with the material and seeing what it did on its own, and then noticed that beautiful branching details and thought, okay, now how can I use that and show that in the work? It also has a really nice kind of atmospheric kind of wash effect. And so as I build up hundreds and hundreds of layers on each piece, it can really show kind of almost a misty depth to the
it does.
To the work as well. So
yeah, you can kind of tell like the darker oxides versus maybe, I don't know if you use different concentrations or more watered down to give that sense of depth in your pieces. So it's like it might be a horizon of the mountains, a tree landscape, or something. It gives that real natural almost minimal, but yet ethereal kind of feel to it.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm mixing it as I'm painting. So it's very much feels like a performance piece. I have to keep the piece fully wet or else the material starts to really stain and embed into the surface. And if I want to go back in and work and kind of wash out and lighten areas, I have to keep the piece like wet the entire time. So really I have a pretty short window of time that I can work on the piece.
So when you talk about layering, it's really an in the moment layering. It's not like you'll go through and do a pour, let it dry completely and come back. Is it all real, like spontaneous? And
most of it, yes.
Yeah.
And little happenings, I'll be pouring in one spot and like this beautiful little kind of a little arch forms early in the painting where the surface is dry and there's a little bit of tension on the surface. And so the material will make these little kind of arched little details. And so when that happens, often I'll try to preserve parts of that and kind of adjust my idea of what I'm trying to make. So I'm very much in the moment responding to the piece as I'm making. So I'm making a choice whether to go darker or lighter in an area. So I'm mixing it, proportionally with water, sometimes just pure water if I really want to go in and lighten an area up. And then on occasion, I will let the material set for just about 15 minutes. And that's enough to really embed some of the texture and the material on the surface. And then if I go in, it'll have a very slightly different effect. It will kind of cut through the material in a sharper way, if that makes sense, as opposed to like a wash and kind of a bleed effect. So occasionally I do let it sit, but it's only for about a 15-minute period of time.
Right.
And that's, so
to me, I mean, I'm having a lot of connection to what you're describing with being a glassblower. It feels very similar to our process. It's all kind of a one-shot. You're in it as you're doing it and you're reacting kind of intuitively to what the material is doing.
Right, exactly.
Is that what you're describing?
Yeah, definitely. Like, you notice a certain blend happening in this area, or you see something just spectacular that's like happening. I'm picturing in glass, like a twist of colors and things and then just going with that and trying to even use those little happenings to enhance the painting or whatever it is.
Right.
So it's
with glass, we have the heat component, so it changes what we're looking at. Do you feel like you have a little bit of that? Like your experience will tell you that when it dries, that this piece is going to look how it has in the past, but when you're actually working it, it'll have a different kind of an effect. That's my experience with glass anyway.
Yeah, a little bit with the painting. I mean, as it dries, it tends to lighten up quite a bit. But once we seal it again, it will kind of pull the richness and the detail back out once I seal it with the varnish. So there's a little bit of that happening, though I feel like with the painting, it's a little bit more, what you see is what you get, as opposed to the ceramic work is very much on that. Right.
Because then you fire it, right? Once it's fired, you come back and the next day and like, ooh, I like what happened there.
Yeah, definitely. And I have kind of developed a certain glaze palette within the ceramics that it's very sensitive. So even like if it's a warm day versus a cool day where my kilns are and how slowly that cools, whether it's like 50 degrees an hour to 100 degrees an hour, the glaze comes out very different. And so there's definitely an element of surprise when I open the kilns to a certain extent, right?
Yeah. Well, you have such a long history with ceramics. What prompted you to branch out and kind of take the aesthetic that you have developed three-dimensionally? What made you want to get into painting?
Yeah. It really happened organically. Like there wasn't kind of, I'm going to start doing paintings now, or I want to develop, into a different medium. It really just came out of a curiosity with the materials, noticing again, like even on the inside of the glaze buckets that I'd be mixing, you'd have that separation of material on the sides.
Yeah.
And it's that similar texture that I have in the painting work. And so I had a show here in Kansas City that said, well, we have some wall space. And at the time, I really wasn't making any ceramic wall work. And I was like, I kind of played around with some paintings several years ago. Maybe I'll just try doing that again. And so a little bit here and there. I made a couple paintings for that show. And then I started getting more curious about it and just trying to affect it and the details. So, it kind of just slowly crept in.
Yeah. Well, I can relate to what you're saying because we work within the same, our same medium. So our 2D work and our 3D work is still glass. So it's not like we have to apply in separate categories.
Sure.
But I would say shortly before the pandemic and really during the pandemic, we really fleshed out this idea of how can our design aesthetic translate not just three-dimensionally on a pedestal, how can it also be on the wall and have them work together?
Yeah.
And do you find that your collectors will incorporate both bodies of work as one? I mean, they will display them at home like that?
Yeah, that's funny. It seems like people either go ceramic or they either go paintings.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, usually I have some kind of long-term customers that I've noticed they'll like maybe buy multiple ceramics pieces. They came at me through ceramics, and they've started to maybe buy a small painting, but they're pretty set in their medium, it feels like. And I have so many people that come into my booth. Even just last weekend, I had several people do this, and I had to laugh because like they'll come in and they'll be like, "Oh, how do you make these?" And I'm like, "Oh, do you mean the ceramics or the painting?" And they're like, "Oh, you have ceramics too." Or the opposite will happen. They'll be like, "Oh, you have paintings also." Like they're not even noticing one or the other. They're just like blinders on and are attracted to one. So yeah.
I've had that experience too, where they'll go, "When did you start doing this?" I'll be like, "Well, just about always."
Right.
But whatever caught their eye initially, that was the thing. And everything else like becomes a spotlight and they're just zoned right in on that.
Yeah, they saw something and that's all they noticed. So yeah.
Well, I'm surprised actually from that story because when I look at your work, like if I look at your booth or you in your booth, I do think that the 3D and the 2D work go so beautifully together. And to me, somebody would just be like, this just totally makes sense. What you have sitting in front of this painting, I want the whole thing. I want this. Yeah. I want this. I want what you got going on here.
Well, thanks. Yeah. It's hard for me to show just one or the other anymore because I just feel like there's such a combo and the booth just feels strange if it's just paintings or just ceramics now. But I occasionally do have someone that comes in and does just that. They're like, this piece sitting right under that painting is exactly what I want. Let's just
They're a set.
Wrap it
They're
up.
meant to be.
Right.
Well, have you run into a situation? I mean, juring into one media sometimes is challenging enough, but have you ever had that tension between you get in one and you don't get in on the other and you have to decide, well, what do I do?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I feel very lucky that I've gotten into so many shows with both. I mean, it just seems impossible at times. So I feel very lucky, but definitely. I mean, we have several shows. We just showed paintings down at Gasparilla. Again, it felt strange
like
not having
missing,
the ceramics
right?
there, but yeah. And then, we've had the opposite where, we just get in ceramics, but I love being able to show the two together. So, and then often like my setup really isn't great for just showing the ceramic work. So like I said, I don't really have wall work clay wise. And so we kind of tend to like, if we get in, or we're kind of testing out, I guess I should say, the just showing paintings. But pretty much if I just get in ceramics now, I just can't. It would require me to redo the booth and shelving and things like that.
It would feel like you'd have to take a pass on that show.
Yeah.
Unless both were.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel, like I said, I feel lucky enough that we're getting into enough shows with both. If that weren't the case, then I probably would have to reconsider and redesign the booth.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about the process of your paintings. And I kind of wanted to, before we discuss your ceramics, since it is really a long history, I want to kind of get into your Peace Corps work and your stuff that really influenced your body of work, kind of the experiences that you've had, in your earlier years. So you were in the Peace Corps. Yeah. When was that?
Yeah, that was back, that was 2005 to 2007. My husband and I went over to the Peace Corps. We were in Mongolia. we part-time taught English and then part-time did a gardening kind of neighborhood workshop project and library project, kind of doing just community projects that you kind of see a need for is what Peace Corps requests. So yeah.
Were you an educator then? That you said you went over to teach? So were you a teacher at that point?
So my first degree was in art education. And so they said, so you've had education experience. We'll place you where you can help with, it was, teaching English as a second language. Yeah. So yeah. And in the Peace Corps, the country requests for specific kind of educators to come in, and Mongolia specifically wanted English teachers, like second language teachers. So yeah, we went over, did that. And like I said, it was only part-time. And so then you can really kind of get out in the community for the other part-time of the work and do different projects.
Is it a volunteer type situation?
It is. Yep. It's a volunteer organization through the government. And it's set up pretty well. Like they take care of everything. You have great health care and, set up kind of safety and because some places that Peace Corps goes are, places that are a little more difficult. Mongolia is a pretty peaceful country. So there wasn't much of that. But
for those people who don't know geography that well, it's an Asian country, right? North of China?
Yep. Sandwiched between Russia and China.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the economic conditions there? Is it quite poor, or what are you experiencing there?
Yeah, it's a pretty poor country. It's a really low population. There are a lot of other countries that are kind of exploiting their natural resources. It's historically a nomadic culture, and a lot of that they've been kind of pushed out of areas. There's not a lot of private land ownership, though now, different businesses are coming in and trying to kind of buy up land. And so it's a real shift in culture for them. And then, the city, especially the capital city, Ulaanbaatar, is pretty poor. Like there are a lot of kids living on the streets and down inside manholes. And so it was, it was a pretty eye-opening experience to see all of that. And then still to be able to see the nomadic culture. And though they seemed somewhat poor, maybe especially compared to what you see, how people live in, the United States, but really they didn't seem like they seemed very comfortable in their lifestyle. And, maybe they only had few belongings, but they really loved their lifestyle of being nomadic and, herding.
Interesting.
Yeah. So two separate worlds within one country, like really high poverty in the cities and then kind of this peaceful nomadic, like throwback to older times. But,
okay. Yeah. Well, what inspired you and your husband to get involved in the Peace Corps?
I think we had just gotten out of school. Like I mentioned, had done an art education degree, and then
and what was his focus?
He was a political science major, but then minored in art history. So he was a little bit interested in art as well. But I think it was mainly just we were both ready for something, like to kind of get out of our own heads a little bit and do something that we felt like was for someone else. And,
nice.
We had all of this focus on getting our degrees. And then it felt like it was time to, like settle down and get a house and, start some kind of family life. And we're like, you know what, before we do that, while we're, not tied down, we can kind of get out in the world and just, see
before the pressures of growing up and doing
right?
like the formula, you felt like you wanted to experience something like that.
Yeah. Just kind of get out and just feel like, we were doing something for others. So, we probably had this kind of silly idea, or even like hearing about like, like you go over and you dig ditches for, in another country or something. And it definitely wasn't like that. But I mean, it was a life-changing experience for the both of us. And, we keep in contact with several people from our time there. And, I know a couple of the students that we even taught there have made their way to the United States for college. They don't really have great universities there. And so for them to go study somewhere else is a big deal. And so, we enjoy keeping in touch.
So do you feel like you have kind of this strong drive towards service and kind of learning about what else is out in the world? Is that what sparked it?
Yeah, like I said, I think we felt like we wanted to do something with our lives that felt like it wasn't just focusing on ourselves. We really wanted to like get out and try to do something that felt like it was going to help other people. And then just kind of experience and see what it's like out there, like what other lifestyles are there and what's it like out in different countries and how do people live? So that was part of it.
Getting out of our privileged bubble that that a lot of us don't even realize we're in, honestly.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, it was an amazing time. I mean, like I said, it was 2 years and we lived with a host family to be immersed in the language, for several months, which was interesting.
So did you go without knowing the language?
Right. Well, Peace Corps kind of preps you a little bit. They give you like a CD at the time it was a CD to practice up a little bit. But you can only do so much. And so really we lived 3 months with a family that spoke no English at all. And that was what really,
like this is getting real. This is right.
That's right. You got to go to the bathroom. You got to know how to ask. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, so when you got there, were there like some feelings of like, what did we get ourselves into? Were you nervous or was it exciting? What sorts of things were you experiencing internally?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, definitely. It was very hard at times. I mean, it was a pretty major culture shock and the food was very different and just the lifestyle, like all of it was pretty difficult. But then I say once we got back to the United States, the culture shock coming back was worse.
So you were gone for how long?
It was 2 years, about 2.5 years once we kind of stayed over in Asia afterwards for a while. And then there's 3 months of training on top of that as well. So
did you feel like that 2 or so many years away from the U.S. you said you came back to culture shock into the U.S. Was it like coming back to what you knew, or did it feel like things kind of kept moving in 2 years and there was learning new things, like was kind of the new normal in the U.S.?
I think what it was like, it felt like the United States was fairly similar to what we had left. I think we had gotten so used to the lifestyle over there. It was much slower. We lived kind of out in rural areas. It was very peaceful. There were no billboards at the time while we were there. It's very like the commercialism is, pretty small. Even we got used to the food, transportation where you just had to you might have to wait an hour, 2 hours if it ever comes,
okay.
That kind of stuff. And I think we just really got into that feel, you live pretty close to the earth there,
Right.
And so I think coming back from that, it felt a little overstimulating to come back to the United States. Like fast food or anything like that just killed our stomachs coming back. And, we're like, oh, wow, this is interesting. It's pretty shocking to kind of come back into like just kind of hyper culture. And yeah, even coming back, like with family and friends, it felt kind of overwhelming, like just so much to like make decisions on and people to visit. And whereas, we had a small group of friends out there, but, life was a very much slower pace. So
that's interesting. I can totally relate to what you're saying. It's like you get out of what is normal, the U.S. and the hyper stimulation everywhere you go. And then when you come back, you're like, whoa, was it always like this?
Right. I know. How did I manage this before?
Why are we all so anxious?
Right. Yeah, right.
So did you try to bring any of that simpler type, experiences from over there back here in your everyday life?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think it heavily influenced my work. I mean, the peacefulness there and like these huge open landscapes where you just see the like slightest bit of a mountain ridge horizon. I mean, it was vast, like amazing, and a little bit on the severe side as well, a little bit overwhelming. There's just big, expansive open spaces. So I think a lot of that came into my work. Like I feel I feel like a lot of that sensibility and spaciousness, almost this kind of meditative space, I feel like has come into the work. I'm very interested in the raw materials and like the materials of the earth and how they react and, you know, kind of like freeze and thaw and cracking and rough textures versus, you know, soft, forms, you know, like river stones, weathered stones, things like that. And so I think that
totally can see that in your work. It looks very geological, landforms and all of that, and the textures are just, you know, it's like when you don't have, let's say, like our work, it's about the transparency and the flow of color and whatever. But when your color is minimal, it lets you focus on other elements like texture, like form, like, you know, a visceral feel that you're getting from it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I try to, you know, really pare down as much as I can. And so I'm very focused on form. It has to just be spot on. And then same with texture or just the slight edge undulation and movement of the top edge of a bowl. I love kind of having a little bit of a play in soft form versus kind of something a little more rough, raw, kind of unrefined. So all of those, you know, I love having these just simple forms that really don't, your first thought isn't necessarily like the finger, the hand of the maker, right? Whereas a lot of clay work is about that, really showing the hand of the maker. And so I like to kind of keep a clean form. I want like there to be a very strong, just emotional kind of intuitive feel, more of a, you know, feeling that somewhere it kind of hits you in the gut or in the chest, that feeling first. And that's what I'm trying to find for myself. And so I hope that, you know, comes through into the viewer as well.
I think you ride that balance of like, you were talking about that being refined, but yet also having it be raw. And so it's like, where is that balance, you know, between, is this like, not like a perfectly centered wheel thrown piece of pottery, like a vessel or whatever. It's hand built, right? The way you're creating your work is all hand built and shaped. And you're right. There's like an emotional connection or reaction to what you're walking up and seeing because it is so different than what you expect when you think of pottery, for example.
Sure. Yeah. I like to balance that, like that kind of masculine, feminine, raw, refined. You know, they have a real weight to them. A lot of them look very heavy, but then I thin the top edge out to give it a, you know, something very delicate. Most of the forms have a rounded, uplifted bottom also to kind of give that lightness and lift as well. But then, you know, that black glaze kind of brings the weight back into the piece. Yeah, I like that. I'm glad you mentioned just kind of that balance back and forth for sure. So,
well, like I see it because it also is something that we try and work on in our work. Because, for example, when we work, and I've talked about this on the pod, so people are probably going like, stop talking about it. But it's the flow and the fluidity in the work. And how do you go from somebody walking up and saying, that piece looks crooked, to being, oh my God, look at how it flows. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like, where do you feel like you feel confident that what you're putting out there isn't like somebody will look at it and think it's a mistake or something. You know what I mean? And I'm not imposing that thought onto your work, but that's what I think about when things maybe have that asymmetry or something.
Right.
It.
No, I definitely see a similarity in our works with certain forms and things like that. I too am looking for, again, that there's usually that sweet spot, right? Of like, I've taken it too far, like too off balance. It's almost like that's the first thing that I notice and it feels off to me, versus that sweet spot where it's like, oh, it's just off just perfectly. Like just that barely out of round circle, right? Like just kind of pushed and bumped in a few places.
It's like that's how that landform was. It's like that's how the glacier came through and it feels like it fits. It's not so out of balance that it feels manipulated or contrived.
Right. Or like a happening or something. Yeah, right. Like something happened to it, right? Like something hit it with like a,
I watched a really cool interview actually a couple months ago. You know the series on YouTube, the Actors on Actor, where they sit down and they talk back and forth. It's very podcasty, and they talk about their process. And it was Michelle Yeoh and Kate Blanchett talking about their big roles that they were just in.
Okay, no, I don't know it.
And Kate Blanchett is talking about the creative process. And I feel like how you've described working intuitively and really being so in touch with the medium and allowing the materials to flow, it relates for me too, where as a creator, we ride that line between what we create, we risk destroying it. You know, that idea of like, we've gone too far with it. It's become overworked. And it's like, it's that place where that makes us kind of like, it's like that adrenaline rush. You know what I mean? Where you're like riding the edge.
Yeah, right. Like if you don't take the risk, you'll never know the reward of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I remember reading a book, what was it called? But it was about the work. It was a craftsman book. The Workmanship of Risk, I believe is what he was talking about in the book, and how that is what kind of really distinguishes us from, say, like something mechanical, right? That risk factor in the work. And he was talking again specifically about craft and traditional craft artists, and how that's the pure magic in the work. Is if you don't take those risks, you'll never have that magic in the work, right? Because then it becomes more machined looking.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like certain forms I make over and over, but it still feels like there is this back and forth pushing to find still that middle. I can kind of feel like I'm doing something that feels a little bit risky, but then also there's a familiarity in there as well. So there's I feel like I'm much more in a comfort zone with risk now than I used to be. Whereas it used to be just like, well, just play around and see what you get. Whereas now there's I find that kind of middle zone within that.
Well, I'm sure when you see an inspiration, like when you were inspired, when you saw what was happening in that bucket and you're like, this could translate onto the wall. And then you had that time where you could again rediscover, play, push it too far, rein it back in on another piece, kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one reason I don't like commissions.
Totally.
I feel like I cannot just let go. I can't risk as much as I really want to. And every commission I've ever made has had a self-consciousness to it, and Absolutely. It looks rigid to me. And I feel like, why don't I just try to make some pieces similar to that in the next round of work I make, and we'll just see if you like them, rather than like, let's do a solid commission here and sign on the line.
I like that. And I've done both. And I would say that no matter what, even if it's like a $200 piece that seems kind of like a filler, I still will stress myself out, like what they saw or what they're picking out based on what they think they're getting.
Yes.
I'm afraid they're going to look at it and go, and it's like, I can't deal with that stress.
I know. I can't either. And I can see the stress in the work. And I know it's not my best work is part of it,
Yeah. So I'd rather just make an attempt to make a few, send photos, put them out, come to a show, whatever. And then they can experience the magic of whether they like it or not.
That's right. I still will do commissions. I like doing it the other way, where it's just a little more organic, but I still will do commissions. But I tend to now, like if it's a single piece, I'll set myself up with multiples and make 2 or 3 at least. It takes the stress off. And as long as that stress is out of my body, then all 3 pieces might be perfectly, wonderful. Yeah. But if I just have one piece in front of me and it's like, this is what they want, I've got to look at the list again. It's just too much. It's just not. I can see it in the work.
Right.
So.
Right. They might not see it, but we feel it, and
that's true. I know, right?
Exactly. I mean, because we know what feels fresh to us, but what our ideal might be.
Yep.
Well, so back to the educator piece. So you were kind of going down a path of being an educator But then did you veer away from that at some point or?
Yeah. I started teaching middle school art and taught it for a couple of years. And I enjoyed the kids
Yeah.
and the teaching mostly, but it was just such a rigid environment. And, I felt like the teachers were held under this kind of magnifying glass and there were all these kind of rules. And there was this one teacher that came in one day and, she said, "Oh, I've got, 22 years. I'm counting down to retirement."
How many years?
And I just sunk. She said 20, she had 22 left. She did.
Think that you have over 2 decades to look forward to something. I mean, why can't you look forward to something like what's going to happen tomorrow, right?
I know. Well, she was already counting down and I just, I could just feel it. And I was just like, you know what? I just can't do this.
Yeah.
It was many things.
Sure.
I was still interested in going back and learning specifically, like I had also studied, taken multiple classes for art education, everything from ceramics, fibers, drawing, all of those things. But I knew that I wanted to go back and really create my own work and focus on a specific medium. So kind of all of those things together, I just felt like the environment wasn't for me. And like I said, the kids were great and fun, but just the atmosphere in general. And then I thought, the best teachers that I had in my lives were they were interesting beyond the way they were teaching. They had interesting lives and had done multiple things in life. And, they really brought their lives and experiences into the teaching that they did. And so I thought, if I'm going to be a teacher, I want to go back and study, and at the time it was either ceramics or metals actually, and also just go get some life experiences. And, that was probably part of the Peace Corps thing as well, like just kind of get out and experience the world. So, I thought if I come back to teaching, great, but for right now, I need to go out and do some other things. So,
was the middle school teaching before the Peace Corps?
It was. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So did the Peace Corps kind of change you towards a direction when you came back of pursuing art for yourself and to kind of, express what you wanted to do?
Yeah. I remember while I was in the Peace Corps, I wasn't doing art at all. And I was kind of visiting a few artists in the country, trying to kind of get a feel for things. But it was a time more of reflection and kind of thinking about what I wanted to do with my life. And I knew probably halfway through the Peace Corps that I was really craving making something with my hands and getting back into that again. And so, that whole absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? Not being even able to do it during that time really set me down the path of, okay, as soon as I get back, I'm going to go back to school, really study this, and try to figure out how to make it more a part of my life of making things. So
that's cool.
Yeah. And that's,
that's the thing. When something is taken away and it's not there and you long for it, then it's something real, that it has hooks in you.
Yeah, definitely. I could feel it then. Whereas before that, I was kind of like, well, I could do this, I could do that. But, once it was like, oh, you can't really do much to make while you're over in Mongolia. In other ways, it was very much a clay thing for me at the time. I really craved working in clay again. And with them being a nomadic culture, they really had very little clay history. Some places you go visit and they've got ancient kilns and a deep, deep history of clay. And Mongolia is not one of those countries.
Well, you did find a place that had a deep history, right? You went to Japan and did some studying there. What was involved with that? Yeah.
So that was it right afterwards. So while we were in Mongolia, like I said, I decided that I really wanted to get back into clay, just full force, start making again. And so while we were there, I went ahead and applied for it's kind of a ceramic workshop program in Japan. And so that way, instead of heading straight back to the United States, we headed just straight over to Japan to that program right immediately. So it was in Tokoname, Japan. It's called the International Workshop of Ceramic Arts in Tokoname. It's one of the 6 ancient kiln sites in Japan. It has a long history of pottery and ceramic making. So we hung out there for the entire summer and lived with a host family and got to travel. It was an amazing program. I don't think it's I think they closed the program down a few years ago, unfortunately. Okay. They took us around to multiple artist studios in the area, some really amazing places, museums. And then we also had a workshop where we got to work in clay, had multiple visiting artists come in and show us how to make traditional Japanese tea bowls, and contemporary Japanese artists coming in. Had just a most amazing experience the whole summer. And of course, just experiencing Japanese culture and just way of life was amazing. So, and that, it really drew me in. Like, I loved getting back into clay, seeing how these other artists were making, but also their lifestyle. Like, I just loved how they pulled the beauty and ceramics. There's such a respect for pottery in Japan.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, there's like there's the tea ceremony and how they hold the tea bowl, and they're very, ritualistic in how they hold it, how they present it to you, how the tea's whisked. And it's just, it's just rich with that tradition. And really, when I started ceramics, that was kind of my introduction, was through traditional Japanese pottery. So this was a chance to really go and experience it. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And it sounds like being kind of tied into their customs and their rituals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the artist, was it like that the artist was a little bit elevated or revered? Like they wouldn't call them the starving artist like we would in the U.S.?
Right. No, it didn't. I'm sure there is some of that. But, we definitely got to go around to the, you could say, more successful artists in a way that they'd been doing it for years. And a lot of them were older, had, beautiful studios and had such a good rapport within the community, sold their pottery directly to people in the area and made a good living that way. Yeah, it was just it was wonderful to see how integrated into the culture and just the lifestyle of all of that it was. So I feel like I really took that with me, and I wanted to be an artist, but also I wanted it to be a lifestyle. I wanted to, it all to kind of flow and have art in my home. And, even I had done some wood firing here in the United States before that, but I have some images, but of their wood kilns and stuff, and they're just beautiful. They're just like built into the hillside, kind of a grassy green hill in the background, and then this beautiful form, the kiln itself. It's functioning to fire the pottery, but it itself is just a beautiful piece of work, a beautiful artwork. Yeah. And so I just, I loved it.
It sounds like it fired in you this passion it just inspired you just to go down that path and to be like, this is for me, and to be young like that and to be exposed to other cultures and to see how it's different from what you grew up in. It is kind of like this wow kind of moment. Yeah, it definitely was. And just to even see people being able to make a living doing art and it be a part of a lifestyle, was pretty eye-opening at that point. Like, I don't feel like I knew many people that were making art for a living, and that could even be an option. And do you come from a background that would have, a family that would think of an artist as a career or a way of life? Oh,
definitely not. No, we were kind of more of a rural farming family and community. Yeah. I mean, we didn't go to museums or much of anything. I took a few art classes in high school, and that kind of sparked me a little bit into studying it in college. But other than that, it was pretty limited. But I mean, I feel like there's a lot of sensibility from just kind of that rural lifestyle, even that kind of pulls into my work.
The hardworking aspect.
But I wasn't ever encouraged or pushed into that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's cool. Well, I mean, I think it was a huge step for you getting out of college to be like, let's experience this. I feel like in today's society, I look at my kids who are in their young 20s, and I feel like so much of what they are planning for their future is what they're predicting has been shown to them already, either on the internet or YouTube videos or whatever. Sure. And just having yourself getting out of your comfort zone and going somewhere where you just experience life and allowing things to unfold in front of you is huge. I mean, that's a huge awakening of options for you to follow and to get excited about.
Yeah, I know. I have some nieces and nephews that are kind of in like their early 20s, and I just want to tell them, like, just drop everything and go do whatever you're curious about. It doesn't have to be traveling the world, right? But just do some things that it's not about money or setting yourself up in a job or, just about having experiences and finding what really kind of lights you up, right? And you never know what that is if you haven't even seen or experienced it yet, right?
Yeah, you can't predict what's going to light you up, as you say. It's like they just have to have it happen. It's spontaneous,
Yeah.
So were you able to, when you came back to the U.S. and kind of start your life, were you able to bring some of that sensibility of not letting the world that we're used to in the U.S., the overstimulation, were you able to kind of keep things more on a natural level for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it was pretty shocking coming back, but I think we kind of knew that it was going to be because before we even came back home, we did some traveling over in Asia and went down like into Cambodia and Thailand and did a little bit. And we knew that this was our opportunity because we wouldn't be able to like afford another plane ticket back for a long time. But so we kind of planned ahead and knew that if we came back and just moved right back to our hometown or around family again, that we'd probably easily slide kind of just right back into our old lifestyle. We felt so good about the experience we had and these ideas in our heads as to what we wanted to do with, the next few years, if nothing else. And so we said, well, let's just move out to Oregon. Let's just move somewhere. Yes. We had a couple friends that had gone out there. It was kind of on our radar as a place we wanted to kind of go anyway, but then they had moved out there and we're like, okay, well, we're coming too. So we knew we can't go back to Missouri, right? We had to do something fresh that kept those ideas flowing and not kind of easily go back into that kind of old life. And so we moved out there for a couple of years, and I knew that I wanted to study clay even more intensely. And so though I had gone back and it took me another year, I got a ceramics undergrad degree before going to the Peace Corps. So, so after the Peace Corps, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to grad school or what, but there were a couple of potters out in Oregon. Tom Rohr, he worked at a community college, let me come out and start working in the studios. And then a potter just south of Eugene, where I was living, Hiroshi Ogawa, he had a wood kiln and had a community of potters that would come out and help fire the kiln. And once I knew that I had enjoyed wood firing in undergrad and knew I wanted to kind of pursue that a little bit more. So I just randomly ran into him at an art opening in Portland and asked him if I could come down and fire. And usually people who fired with him paid money to have space in the kiln and be a part of it.
Okay.
And so he said, sure, you can do that if you come down and split wood and mix glazes and clean the studio. So
earn your keep.
Yeah, right. So I kind of had an informal, you'd say, apprenticeship with him.
Nice.
And had an amazing experience there. I told him what I was doing and what I was interested in. And I said, I really want to get my work good enough to apply to grad school. And so he helped me do that. Like it was almost like going to grad school already. If I'd only known at the time, because he would critique my work and make suggestions. And, of course,
could have saved all that money and got a really good experience. But it sounds like, each of these experiences just led you down the path you were supposed to go to get to where you are.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So
definitely. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so tell me a little bit about your family, your husband, your daughter, and kind of how you guys all navigate this life now.
Yeah, my husband, he's working in the studio with me now. We have an 8-year-old daughter. And so she kind of goes along with us to most shows now and hangs in the studio, and it's almost a, family affair now.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in antiques and auction business. He's a third generation auctioneer, had his own company for a while. Yeah. So
does he do was he be the one who stands up and does the calling out like that?
Yeah.
This color, this color, this color. Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. He's called auctions since he was 15, I guess. So, which he grew up in it. So yeah. But so we moved to Kansas City, and he started doing a few more kind of online auctions, this and that. And then eventually decided that he didn't want his own business. So he still enjoys doing his family's auction business is about 2 hours away. So he gets to go help with it on occasion and still enjoys it. But
what does he do with you in the studio?
Yeah. So he, in 2020, the plan was he was putting his auction business aside and he was going to join me in the studio, and we were going to do our first full year of a full lineup of art fairs, right? Like previous to that, we'd only done like maybe 2-3 tops a year, and they were all in the area. So, we're like, all right,
and then the whole world shut down, right?
That's right, of course, So yeah, things dropped out, but we just kind of, hung on to what we could, and we still just stuck with it. He still just stayed in the studio and worked with me. And at this point, he helps like seal and prep all of my painting panels. He does a lot of grunt work.
Yeah, right.
And he even he'll even help me kind of prep clay. He helps package and ship, do all of that kind of stuff. And then when we go to the shows, he is usually the one to set up. So we kind of switch on and off with our 8-year-old. So I'll try to help set up. And then once it's like the 8-year-old's done and it's just more like, it's harder for her to be there than it is easier. So then I'll take off with her and let him he does mainly set up and take down, and I hang with our daughter, and then we switch for the weekend. So they get to go out and have fun, go to the museums and things, and I work the show all weekend. So yeah,
that's a wonderful balance that, it's like there's so much more that goes into our careers than just the creation of the art. And to have a partnership like that, it makes it work. It makes it viable,
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it took a while for us to find our roles within it so that we didn't like step on each other's toes constantly, which I'm sure you and Renee have,
we did.
enough.
The two of us were both the artists, so we are integral in the design and the execution of each piece. But then you throw in the whole kid thing.
Yeah.
And we're not the traditional family where it's like Renee would have never thought that she would have done the woman's work and I would have done the man's work. But for some reason, it just kind of happened that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know. Right. I know. Well, before we were doing a full line of art fairs, I was kind of in that more traditional role while my daughter was young. And then now it's completely switched. Like my husband's does drop off and pick up at school. And, he's usually the one like cooking dinner and doing the laundry, and I'm staying late in the studio. And so the roles have kind of switched in our household.
I mean, and that's great. I mean, that's really what a true partnership is and should be, where where the roles get defined based on what the needs of the family are, and not necessarily by what society says is supposed to be done.
Yeah. Right. No, I love it. I mean, I had no idea art fairs were really like this, that they were so independent. And like, I feel like my husband and I enjoy traveling. And so we're like, wow, this is a perfect combination for us to be like, this is our business, but also we get to travel and see all over the United States. And, when we don't have an art fair for a while, which we don't for a couple of months, we have some downtime. We're itching to get on the road for sure. And so it's nice that both of us love it, and our daughter too, most of the time.
Yeah. Is she in school, or does she have like a homeschool program, or how do you do that?
She's in a small private Waldorf school, and so we can take her out as much as possible, as much as we want, and
as much as you want. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we are thinking of doing a little bit of a homeschool combo for next year.
It's really interesting. People would ask us about that if we would ever consider doing that. And our first reaction was no way. But nowadays, I have some family members whose kids do what would be considered homeschool, but it's so hybrid. It's so integrated. It's really cool what's available now that can be done on the computer, but then they also will get together for social time in certain activities and stuff, because there are so many things that kids need that traditional homeschooling from the olden days doesn't really cut it,
Yeah, I know. Well, and my idea of homeschooling previously, years ago, was very different from, like you say, what people are doing now, and the resources available and the social groups that can get together. And I mean, we found that when we are on the road, we're pretty well homeschooling. Like we're, even the museum, taking her out to museums and this and that. And we practiced, telling time on the way down to Florida this year, using the clock. So, and then she loves meeting up with the other art fair kids.
Okay.
Like she's got some buddies on the road.
Who are some of the art fair families out there nowadays with little kids?
Well, Yaquin Neal has a couple of kids. Right. And so we met up with them at Houston. And, my husband and his wife took the kids to the aquarium, and they hung out behind the booth just playing.
That's awesome.
And Bryce McCausland, he has a couple of young kids that they homeschool and bring to the shows. So we've met up with them, and
that's great. It's a whole new generation. I know Duke Clausen and I talked, and he considered his daughters growing up as free-range kids. Their idea of the art fairs was like, I mean, your daughter's way too young for that, but they would just kind of roam and get into all sorts of mischief and stuff.
Yeah, well, there are times that I don't know where she is. I'm like, hold on, wait a second.
Wait a minute.
I'm like, Eric, where's Sona? Yeah, but yeah, it's pretty fun. Yeah.
Well, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I don't want to make it too long of a convo because we've talked a lot about juries lately
that's fine.
On the show. But specifically what I wanted to talk about is you and I were on the Art in the Pearl jury. Yeah. And it was a nice experience, in my opinion. I don't know. What was your reaction?
Yeah, I thought it was a great experience. I mean, I've had good experiences on some other juries. This one just had this feeling of, and I think maybe you had mentioned this even previously, though, about how you could really just go with your gut reaction to the work and the quality of the work. Often discussion muddles it quite a bit. And so we had limited discussion unless it was something that really pertained to, buy-sell or issues with certain artwork. And it just felt like a nice, clean, very fair way to jury a show.
I liked it too. Totally. Yeah. It's incredible how even just the slightest question, which I think is needed. I mean, I truly like, for example, like a jewelry thing and what's going on here. Yeah. But even just a reaction or a sigh or whatever can make me go, oh, do they have a different reaction than I have? Sure. Because this is how I'm taking it. And then I'm thinking, I'm getting in my head about it. I'm like, no, I need to stay in that mode of letting it hit and scoring, and not scoring based on what I think Erica thinks or what, Patricia thought or whatever. Yeah. And I felt like if we would have gotten into a debate about it, it would have felt almost like a politicking kind of thing.
Sure. I agree. I mean, I think a lot of times the comments aren't very constructive and helpful within juries to help you select the best work. And I think especially when you're just looking at the images and a small statement by everyone. And so then when comments start coming in, unless it's something that, is very relevant because it's like against the rules to be doing this, right? Or if it's a comment about like, I don't know enough about jewelry, right? And so to have a jeweler on that jury is great because they can tell me that like, oh, those parts are purchased and put together as opposed to handcrafted or things like that. So very relevant information. But a lot of times I think just personal, experiences other artists have had with other artists come into play whenever the discussion can get out of hand and emotional even to the point of I just feel like I feel like it's much more fair when everyone's just presenting images, a short statement, and we keep it pretty simple and clean. I feel like feels like the fairest way.
It does. And I also feel like it is about integrity, even though we know some of the work that might be before us. Mm-hmm. I had the courage, like I know all of us had the courage, to really score it based on how I felt, not on how I feel about the person, but on the work.
Yeah.
And I know another jury happened recently, and it's been just about any of the shows I've been at lately. That's been the topic of like, oh my God, I didn't get in. What's going on? Right. 3 of the jurors gave me a bad score. Who were they? I know they didn't reveal the names of the juror, but to be juror number 1, 4, and 5 and be like, people would be like, oh my God, who scored me like that? I thought they were my friends. And it adds such a level of stress that is just, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I felt like the jury that we were on, it made it so much simpler. Like it took the stress off of the jurors. And I feel like several, like, I don't know what your personal preferences are or any of the other jurors, because we only discussed more kind of just like things that really applied to whether this was excellent work. Did it follow the rules? All of those
technical
things. So,
components to it.
Right. Exactly. And so I appreciate not knowing what the other jurors really like. They're just kind of personal, subjective opinions are on something. And so like juries that I've been on before, though, like it's going to be such a strange beast. That's what I feel like. One of the shows that I helped jury, I felt like this show is a 5-headed monster. 5 jurors, 5, like it was we all fought for like some of our top artists that we thought should definitely be in the show, but let's say 3 jurors thought definitely not. And so there was this weird kind of shifting of like, I felt like, we would all kind of fight for our tops. And so then there would be kind of an interesting mix of, I feel like, who got in the show in a way. And this show also requested that there's, a certain kind of quota for each, category, right?
Okay.
And so there was more discussion, I think, whenever that's the case. So I feel a little bit lucky that the show we were jurying didn't have those requirements, any quotas for any mediums either. Because then it does feel like people start just chatting more. So yeah, I mean, there have been shows that I feel like I know the opinions and what type of work that some of the jurors like, and I can like the comments made and stuff, like I can tell that you've got a split jury, and so you're going to have a really different show. Whereas like with the show we juried, I don't know at all. Like I actually still don't know who even got in the show, right? What the full overall show looks like. So it just feels a little bit, I don't know, it feels a little bit more blind and fair in that sense. I appreciate that.
My comment earlier from like listing the jurors and the scores, I really do appreciate when shows want to be transparent about the process. I get that. Yeah. And I almost feel like in this case, maybe being too transparent is it doing any good? Because, you have 5 jurors this year. It's going to be 5 different jurors next year. It's going to be 5 different jurors the next year. Yeah. So getting that info of what those jurors reacted to your work doesn't mean squat.
Right.
When it comes to the next 5 jurors.
Right. It doesn't really help you improve. I like the transparency as well. I think transparency is great. I was worried about comments, though, because I feel like a lot of times they get taken out of context or they're not super constructive, things like that. And so I would hate for an artist to get a negative comment on something, but from one juror that says something that maybe the rest of the jurors completely disagree. And, and then they take that to heart and like either like, okay, I'm done with this, right? And just stop making because, that's can be pretty painful sometimes, or
they make changes to their body of work or the direction they're going based on one comment.
Person's
the
comment.
Nature of the beast is we don't remember all of the glowing comments or whatever. We think about that random head scratcher.
Right. So I worry about that and with the comments. So they can be helpful, but they can also be, hurtful and not helpful. But
and we're not dishing any show's process. We're just having a discussion about it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. And like as artists, it's like I want to understand that side of things. And so many shows do it so differently. And
there's reasons, but I mean, it's good to hear how it affects somebody who is getting that information and wondering what they can do with it, the person who's been juried, and then also the point of view from the actual people who are doing the jurying to know what kind of stress that puts the jury under.
Sure. I mean, I've gotten, emails after jurying shows from very unhappy people before, and I'm like,
I thought we were friends, Erica.
That's right, exactly. I'm 1 out of 5, please.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that actually was when we did the jury for Art and the Pearl, when at first it's a slower process just because we're all trying to find our rhythm with it. Yeah. And what helped me find my rhythm was I might be getting this one wrong on either way, down a low score or high score, but I'm confident that the other ones have my back and they're going to catch my mistake.
Yep. I felt the same way. And I loved, we had a 1 through 10 scoring, and I've been on one, juries that was either like a yes, no, or a 1 through 5, don't use 3 type of scoring. And I felt so much better on the 1 through 10 because I felt like I could get score in that middle range if I felt like, you know what, I think the other jurors probably know more information. I'm not quite sure on this one. And so that way it was almost like I let the other jurors skew the scoring a little bit. Whereas if I was definitely a no or definitely a yes, if I threw a 1 or a 10 out, it definitely, I think, overall helped push that person into,
more options for nuance.
Yeah. So I felt like if I felt strongly, it actually had more of an effect than that, really short 1 to 5 range is hard, or yes, no.
And I did like on this one where it was, like you said, 1 to 10, we couldn't score the middle scores, the middle 3.
Right.
So I kind of felt
understand.
But that reaction was, okay, I know they're above the middle range or I know they're below the middle range from my, when I was jurying. And now within that, where does that, you get 3 numbers, 3 numbers to do that. So they were in the high part of low or the low part of high.
Yeah.
And then anyway.
Yeah. So I know.
Well, this was a good talk, Erica. I really enjoyed sitting down and learning about you and your process and what makes you happen. What makes you tick.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, cool. So what do you got next? What are you getting ready for?
Just kind of a string of shows. I'll be at Des Moines and Cherry Creek, and then we'll head out west in August. So kind of trying to make for the end of the summer.
I think I'll be at both of those with you. We just got the call from Denver that we got pulled from the wait list. So
sweet. That's
I'm
exciting.
Thrilled.
Yes. I know, wait list. You never know, right? That's great.
Man. It was an exciting day when we heard that.
Yeah. Excellent.
Anyway, we'll see you out there at the next ones, and thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great talk with Erica Iman Douglas. I really appreciated bringing her voice to the show and to all of you folks out there. I enjoy spending time with the work when I'm at a show with her and her husband, and then to get to hear her talk was really cool.
My favorite part is when she said, when she was teaching, and she said her favorite teachers were people who lived interesting lives and had interesting experiences, and how that, that contributes to the work. And it was really great hearing about that history in the Peace Corps and her travels through Asia that kind of set a course on what kind of life she wanted to lead, but then also the kind of work she wanted to make. So that was fun. I really enjoyed that insight.
Yeah, I loved that part as well. And I didn't like the part of the jury discussion at the end because I disagreed with you.
Oh, really? You like the banter part where people can write the part where people can say.
It boils down to this, I think, and it depends on the kind of jury that you have. I think you guys at Art and the Pearl had a very educated panel. And it was all people that knew what they were looking at. Sure. And I think when it boils down to a jury, once you start bringing in community members and things like that, and it's like, okay, they may not know what they are even looking at. Sometimes those talks can be a lot more crucial to the process.
I agree. I see what you're saying. If it isn't all artists on the jury, I totally can see what you're saying on that one. Yeah.
Also, I mean, I think that so many different shows, run their juries in different ways, and I think that's fine. I'm kind of against an overall homogenized, every rule works for every show. I don't think that that's true. I think different juries for different things.
There can be some standardization between shows, but you're right. If there's details within the context of how a particular show's focus is, if they are, let's say they are a chamber of commerce versus an art center that's providing arts for kids all year round. They have different intentions and focuses. So it only makes sense that they're going to tailor their show differently for whatever reason.
Sure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
All right. Enough about us all episode. I think we should wrap this up and get back to the studio. What do you say?
My studio is a mess. We will talk soon. I got to pack some stuff up and head north up to your part of the country.
All right. Well, safe trip and see you soon.
Thank you, brother.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, find us on social media and engage in these conversations.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.
Oh, and if you like the show, we'd love it if you would give us your 5-star rating and offer up your most creative review on your podcast streaming service. See you next time.